Hi guys, it is Jhes and Stu back with 2110 Fitness. We've got another IGTV video for you. This week's topic is going to be macronutrient counting. But before we hop into that, we just want to refresh you on our current class offerings. We have a 10 a.m. kids physical education session happening Monday through Friday, as well as a noon bodyweight boot camp session happening Monday through Friday as well. That one's about 45 minutes long. And we also have a weekly challenge. It is max push-ups this week, which are super tough, but definitely worth it because we have a $25 Amazon gift card up for grabs. So feel free to take advantage of that. We will be announcing the winner on Friday, and you can find more info on that on our social media accounts as well. But to hop into our macronutrient counting, we are going to refer back to our case study that we did last week with our client Jane. Jane is a 35-year-old female. She's 5'6", weighs about 175 pounds. Jane is active roughly 3 times a week, and she also eats about 4 healthy meals throughout the week as well. So it's kind of just a general overview. Feel free to check out our video on Jane last week. But this week, we are diving a little bit more in depth into macronutrient counting. So, Stu, what is that going to look like?
Well, Jane said she wants to lose 20 pounds. And our job is to determine whether or not that's a safe thing for her to do or not. And that comes in at any point in time with anybody's goals. If the goal is safe, we'll help you get there. If we determine that it is not safe, then maybe we try to alter the goal a little bit so that you can achieve something similar, but in a safe manner that's not going to do anything bad. So in this case, safety means not dropping somebody's BMI so low that they're now not considered safe anymore, which means dropping weight from one bracket of a BMI to another bracket of your BMI, and that wouldn't be very good. In this case, Jane's goal is to lose 20 pounds, and we want to see, okay, where does her BMI start, and where does it put her once she's lost that 20 pounds, and is that safe? So there's a normal range, there's an overweight range, and there's obese and obese 1, obese 2, and all that kind of stuff at the top. So let's figure out what Jane is right now. What did Jane come in as for her BMI?
Jane's BMI was 28. That's taking into account her weight and height. And so that put Jane in the overweight category, which is a range of 25 to 29.9. So Jane's goal is definitely going to be safe. She's in a good range to be losing the 20 pounds. And remember, Jane's goal isn't necessarily composition based. It's just total mass, the number you see on the scale. But from there, we are then going to actually dive into what it means for Jane to start macronutrient counting. So we need to determine what her BMR is, or basal metabolic rate, to see how many calories she's burning just to live. That's not including any activity, that's just all of her natural body processes. And after doing that calculation, we did use the Mifflin St. Dior calculator, but there are a variety out there. We determined that Jane's basal metabolic rate was approximately 1,500 calories in a day. And then from there, we are taking into account Jane's activity, which she's lightly active. And with that multiplier, it puts her at a total caloric intake of 2,069 calories just to maintain.
Right, so if she eats that every single day, stays the same with her activity, stays the same with her healthy eating, she's not going to change any body weight, which is exactly where we want to start. Now we got to figure out what do we got to change so that she does see a change. So we start by giving her a deficit. Now remember, there's a lot of different ways to do this. You can increase your activity per week or any other number of ways of doing it, but we start with a deficit, and that deficit is going to be 20%. That brings her down to 1,655 calories per day, and what we do after that is we figure out, okay, is that too much or too little, and that's based off the responding variable of her body weight changing per week. The other question that we have to ask is, what is the lowest that we will go for somebody? And in this case, you don't want to go below anybody's BMR calculation because that's going to start changing things with their metabolism. You don't want to drop low because that's going to adjust their metabolism. It's going to make dropping weight or fat or gaining muscle really tough down the road. And we want to pick things that are good for longevity and that are sustainable. So now that we know what Jane's deficit is, what do we do?
We are now looking at her actual macronutrient breakdown. So that means how many carbs, protein, and fat she's going to be consuming in a day. Typically, just for the average individual, we normally start everyone off on a 30-30-40 split, which means 30% of your calories is coming from fat, 30 from protein, and 40 from carbohydrates. And if we look at that in terms of grams for Jane, that means she's going to have 55 grams of fat, 124 grams of protein, and we also have 166 grams of carbohydrates. So those are the total values that we want Jane to be hitting every single day so that we can then reflect back on her 1 pound a week loss, that sort of thing, because we're going to kind of be trialing this for the first couple of weeks.
Right. So everybody's different. Everybody's changes are going to be determined by their individual bodies. But we put everybody on a very similar start because we want to try to keep that protein level high. There's a very large emphasis on protein, especially when we do our macro coaching here, because protein, or keeping that protein level high, is going to keep your muscle mass high. And muscle mass is really important for longevity. Remember, everything that we do is based around longevity and sustainability. So whatever we pick for you is going to be something that's going to help you achieve your goal and stay at your goal weight, strength, size, whatever that might be. So that 30% of protein of her daily intake is relatively high, but we want to focus on trying to keep that as high as possible in a way of keeping her protein level up and keeping her muscle mass around. Now, how do we figure out how many grams of whatever is in whatever? What's the best way of doing that?
Well, we're going to be using a scale. They do have food scales, they're tiny, a little bit more compact for the kitchen, but we are going to be looking at how many grams of fats, proteins, and carbs is in each thing that you want to eat, basically. And weighing is very important, specifically using grams, because cups and teaspoons and all of that sort of thing is not necessarily as accurate if you're literally comparing 15 grams of cream cheese to a tablespoon of cream cheese. The labels don't always properly identify how much of something is actually in one of those measuring tools, which is why weighing is typically the best and most consistent option. Plus, if you're looking at like protein sources, you're looking to weigh raw in comparison to cooked, that sort of thing, to see how much actual like viable protein is in the meat. So from there, we want to look at this whole method as flexible, and that's really what it is, right? It's flexible dieting.
Yes, we determine this, or not we determine, but we promote flexible dieting because, in my opinion, and in 2110 Fitness's opinion, it is the most sustainable thing for you to do, which means you've got macro goals to hit, which is your protein, your fat, your carbs, and you're allowed to hit that in really whatever way you want. Now, there's other diets out there that do different things. For example, if it fits your macros, IFYM is the one that is going to say, okay, you can hit your macros however you want. So if somebody's short on carbohydrates, you could do something, or short on carbs and short on fat perhaps. Maybe you can go have an O. Henry or something like that, eat that up. That's not very, that's not a whole food option for you to fulfill your macro goals for the day, but they're totally fine with it because in that style of eating, which is not that different than ours, but in that style of eating, they say, okay, whatever you get your macro goals from, that's fine. What we recommend with flexible dieting is more of a whole food approach. And the reason for that is whole foods typically will have a lower amount of inflammation in the guts or in the system because we don't want to have inflammation because inflammation causes water retention and water retention causes an increase in weight and then you don't see any changes. So we want you to hit those goals with this flexible dieting with whole foods, and that will help you get to your goal without seeing all these huge bumps because then you don't have all this inflammation happening. Inflammation is bad. We want to stay away from that as much as humanly possible. Now, once we've determined all of our percentages, all of our caloric intake goals, where our food's coming from, all these pieces, how do we determine if we're actually making progress or success?
We're going to be back to watching that number on the scale. So Jane typically will be weighing every day at the same time, and we're going to be watching for her total net weight loss in a week. And we're looking for that same gold standard of 1 pound a week. But if we find that Jane isn't hitting that, whether she's over it, losing a little bit too much in a week, or under it, that's where we're going to use this method of like checks and balance to evaluate whether or not we need to adjust her caloric intake, the macronutrient ratios, any of that sort of thing, or even change her activity level. Like there are a lot of variables and we need to find something that's going to be suitable for Jane, but after she's tried it for at least 2 weeks, if not potentially 3, we want to then be looking at changing things, whether or not she's on a good path toward her goal. Remember, Jane's goal is 20 pounds. She's in it for the long haul, especially if we're doing it in the sustainable way. Like you're already at roughly 5 months if you're losing 1 pound a week, right? So definitely make sure that it's going to be realistic, sustainable for you. If you're looking for how to actually do this, aside from our video, we do have it in our ebooks.
We just came out with ebooks a week ago. You can go to our website under the ebook tab and you can download for free the first week of our training. That only involves the training, so you guys can hop in there and do a couple workouts and that kind of thing. Or you can download the whole ebook, which provides you with a bunch of nutritional information, which is essentially a lot of the stuff that we just talked about right now, but it gives you a little bit more in depth. And then it also involves things like a mobility routine and stuff like that. So lots of content within that ebook. Hop on over, check it out. If at the very least you guys just want to download the workouts just so you can get some movement in, awesome. That's it for our topic on macro coaching. We'll check in with you guys next week. Can't wait to see you then. Oh, I didn't do it. No.